3 taps for an angel. I didn't sleep that night. The road home was a tunnel of headlights and black trees, and every time Trevor checked the mirrors, I felt my stomach clench, certain I'd see that filthy face hovering in the back window like a sticker that wouldn't peel off. The car heater was on too high, blasting dry air that made my eyes sting worse, but I couldn't ask him to turn it down. I didn't want to speak at all. If I spoke, I'd have to admit this was real life, not something happening to somebody else on a screen. Trevor drove like nothing had happened, smooth controlled, both hands at 10 and 2. The only sign of anything unusual was the way his knuckles kept flexing on the steering wheel, as if his hands were still trying to finish the job. "You're quiet," he said after a while. I stared straight ahead. My phone sat in my lap like a live grenade. The unknown message, tap, 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 angel, glowed in my notifications until I finally turned the screen face down. "I'm fine," I lied. Trevor exhaled through his nose a short sound that wasn't quite a laugh. "No," he said, "you're not, and you shouldn't be. You're finally seeing what I've been telling you. That should have made me angry. It did somewhere deep down, but fear is a solvent. It dissolves pride, it dissolves arguments, it dissolves your sense of what's fair. All I had left in my body was the need to get home and lock a door. When we pulled into our apartment lot, I scanned the shadows between parked cars. A cat could have moved and I would have jumped. The stairwell smelled like old carpet and somebody's burnt dinner. The hallway light on our floor flickered, and I waited for Trevor to joke about it. He didn't. He walked in front of me, keys ready, shoulders squared, like he wanted the world to see him guarding something. Inside, the apartment felt too open. Too many windows, too many thin panes of glass. I went straight to the blinds and twisted them shut with shaking hands. Trevor watched me for a moment, then went through the locks like a ritual deadbolt chain second latch we'd installed after a different nothing that had made him say, "See, I protect us." When the door was secured, he turned to me with that look again, the hero look. The one that made me feel like gratitude was the only safe emotion. "You understand now," he said softly. I wanted to tell him to stop. I wanted to say this wasn't a lesson, it was my life. But my throat still felt bruised from holding back screams. I couldn't find the voice for a fight. I went to the bathroom and stared at myself in the mirror. My pupils were huge, swallowing the color of my eyes. I looked like a person who had just been given a new kind of knowledge, how quickly a stranger can step out of a screen. In the shower, the water was so hot it turned my skin pink, but it didn't scrub the feeling away. The feeling that I'd been looked at as if I were an object someone could claim. When I got out, Trevor was waiting on the couch. He'd put on a calm TV show, something light and stupid, like he could overwrite the memory by filling the room with canned laughter. He patted the cushion beside him. "Come here." I sat stiff. He wrapped an arm around my shoulders, pulled me in, and kissed my temple like a parent. His grip tightened when I tried to lean away. "Promise me," he said, still gentle, "you'll delete it." There it was, the demand dressed as concern, the "I'm asking because I love you" tone that left no room to refuse without being cast as reckless, selfish, naive. I swallowed. The thought of my page, the photos, the messages, the tiny feeling of control it gave me flashed through my mind. And right behind it came the image of a dirty finger tapping glass and a glowing screen with my face on it. Fear made the decision for me. "Okay," I whispered. Trevor's shoulders loosened as if he'd been holding his breath. "Thank you," he said. "You're doing the right thing." The next day, in the bright, normal sunlight of morning, it almost felt impossible that anything had happened at all. The world outside our window was ordinary people walking dogs, a neighbor hauling laundry, a delivery truck backing up with that familiar beep, beep, beep. If I'd been alone, I might have convinced myself the gas station incident was a nightmare. But my phone proved otherwise. There were new messages, anonymous accounts. A few of them were the typical gross kind, the kind I'd learned to delete without reading. But one stood out because it didn't beg. It simply said, "If I can find you once, I can find you again." I reported it. I blocked it. I watched the blocked list grow like a wall made of sand. By evening, I did what Trevor wanted. I deleted everything. Account photos, profile, the whole thing gone in a few taps that felt like cutting off my own hair. My finger hovered over the final confirmation prompt, and in my head I heard Trevor's voice, satisfied. "You understand now." I expected him to comfort me, to say he was sorry it had come to this. Instead, he watched me press delete and nodded like a manager watching an employee finally follow instructions. "Good," he said. "Now we can move on." But we didn't move on. That's the thing about fear, it doesn't end because you obey it. For weeks afterward, I jumped at every sound in the hallway. I watched reflections in dark screens to see if someone stood behind me. I stopped wearing earbuds outside. I stopped posting selfies. I stopped feeling like my body belonged to me. And Trevor kept the moment alive, not with cruelty, not with direct threats, with reminders delivered like casual conversation. If we passed a gas station, he'd glance at me and say, "You remember why I don't like you scrolling at night?" If I mentioned an outfit, he'd say, "Just don't invite attention, okay? You saw how quick it can happen." Sometimes he'd bring up his own knuckles like a badge. "I had to knock 3 teeth loose," he'd say, as if repeating it made him more real, more strong, more necessary. At first I was grateful. Then the gratitude turned sour because it came with an invisible invoice. "I saved you, so you owe me obedience." I didn't tell my friends what had happened. I told them I was tired, stressed, busy. I didn't want their opinions about my relationship. I didn't want anyone to look at Trevor and see something I didn't want to admit. Because the truth was ugly and small, the man I was dating was using my fear to tighten a leash. A month later, my page was gone, and life was pretending to be normal again. Trevor acted brighter in public, like the problem had been solved. He started suggesting fresh starts, little changes, new locks, new routines, the kind of things that sound responsible until you realize you're being trained. Then, on a random Tuesday afternoon when Trevor was at work, I found the phone. I wasn't looking for it. I was cleaning the junk drawer because I couldn't stand the clutter anymore. Receipts, dead batteries, a cracked lighter, old coupons. My hands were moving on autopilot, my mind numbed by routine when my fingers touched a hard plastic edge buried under papers. A prepaid flip phone, old, scuffed, the kind of thing you see in crime shows and laugh about because who uses those anymore? I almost tossed it. Then I felt curiosity sharp and unwanted. I told myself I should check if it was dead before throwing it away. I told myself it might be mine from years ago. I told myself a lot of harmless reasons. It turned on. Not only did it turn on, there was battery left. A dim little screen blinked to life, and with it came a row of unread messages, all from the same number, no contact name saved. My pulse quickened as I scrolled. The messages were short, blunt, transactional. Not romantic, not friendly. Like people negotiating a job. "Are you sure this is just to scare her? I don't want any cops on my ass." My stomach dropped. My hands went cold. Below that Cash App didn't go through. Need 50 more for bus fare. My breathing turned shallow. I scrolled faster, as if speed could change what I was seeing. Then the line that rewired my entire understanding of the last month. Wait until she's alone. Show her the page. Just scare her a little. Make it real. I need her to quit. The date stamp made the room tilt. 2 days before the gas station. I read it again and again, like my eyes could decode a different meaning if I stared long enough. Make it real. I felt something open up in my chest, not panic, not fear. Betrayal. I sat down on the kitchen floor because my legs stopped trusting themselves. The apartment around me looked the same cheap counters, same dull light, same dish towel draped over the sink. But the air felt different, like the room had been holding this secret, and finally decided to let me choke on it. My mind replayed the gas station scene, but now it played with a new soundtrack. Trevor telling me to stay in the car. Trevor leaving me alone. The man appearing like he'd been summoned on cue. Trevor bursting out at the perfect moment. Trevor's triumphant, satisfied face. I remembered the way the stranger looked amused as he backed into the dark. I remembered the 3 taps on the glass. Tap, tap, tap. A thought flickered up small and vicious. What if the tapping wasn't for me? What if it was a signal I wanted to throw up? I wanted to run outside and scream. I wanted to call someone, anyone, but the idea of explaining this out loud made me feel stupid, like I'd been tricked in a way that everyone would judge. So I sat there and did the one thing Trevor had trained me to do when I was overwhelmed. I went quiet. Then another thought came, colder and clearer. If he staged this once, what else has he staged? I didn't confront him. I didn't wait for him to come home so he could talk his way into my doubt again. Trevor's talent wasn't violence, it was language. He could wrap a lie around my throat and call it a scarf. I packed. Not everything, just the important things. Clothes, documents, charges, the small box of keepsakes I couldn't bear to leave behind. My hands shook as I moved, but my mind was focused in a way it hadn't been in months. Before I left, I took photos of the messages on the flip phone with my own phone. Then I powered the flip phone off and wrapped it in a towel like it was something contaminated. I changed my number in the parking lot, sitting in my car with the engine running, watching my rearview mirror like it could warn me if Trevor appeared. I blocked him on everything the moment the new number activated. Then I drove. I didn't have a long plan. I had a direction away. My friend Brianna lived across town. She'd always been the kind of woman who didn't apologize for taking up space, the kind who carried pepper spray openly on her keychain and dared the world to comment, the kind who would listen without gasping, then ask, "Okay, what do we do next?" When I pulled up to her place, it was late enough that her street was quiet. Porch lights glowed in warm squares. Somewhere a dog barked once, then settled. Brianna opened the door in sweatpants, hair, and a messy bun face, already concerned. She took one look at me and stepped aside. "Come in," she said. "No questions yet, just action." Inside her apartment, the air smelled like vanilla candles and clean laundry. Safety in scent form. My knees finally buckled and I sat on her couch, clutching my own hands like they were the only solid thing in the room. When I told her everything, I expected disbelief. I expected her to ask what I did to deserve it. I expected a lecture. Brianna listened without interrupting, her eyes narrowing as the story shifted from stranger at the window to Trevor as hero to flip phone proof. When I showed her the photos of the messages, she didn't gasp. She exhaled slowly and said very quietly, "That's not love, that's a trap." Then she stood, walked to her kitchen drawer, and pulled out a small notebook and a pen. "Okay," she said, voice firm. "We're going to do this smart. You're going to stay here. We're filing a report. And you are not under any circumstance going back alone." Her certainty made me want to cry harder, because certainty is what you crave when your reality has been rearranged by someone else. That night I slept in her guest room with the door locked. Brianna left a baseball bat leaning against the wall and her spare car keys on the nightstand. "You hear anything she told me, you wake me up." I nodded. I fell asleep with a strange kind of relief, the kind that comes from not being alone. At 3:12 a.m., 3 soft taps hit Brianna's front door. Tap, tap, tap. Not loud enough to wake the building, not frantic, not angry, patient, polite, like whoever was outside knew exactly what time fear listens best. My eyes snapped open, heart already racing as if it had been running this track for weeks. In the dark, the room felt unfamiliar for a split second. Wrong ceiling, wrong shadows, until my brain remembered Brianna's place. Safe. Then the tapping came again. Tap, tap, tap. A cold line drew itself down my spine. I sat up, holding my breath. I listened for Brianna. The apartment was silent. No footsteps, no movement. Maybe she didn't hear it. Maybe she was sleeping too deep. The taps came a third time, slower now, as if savoring the rhythm. Tap, tap, tap. A memory surfaced, something my grandmother used to say when I was little, a piece of folklore I'd always laughed at as an adult. Don't answer 3 knocks at night. If you answer, you invite what's on the other side. Back then, it was ghost story nonsense, a superstition you repeat because it feels old and powerful. Now in the dark, it didn't feel like nonsense. It felt like a rule that had been written for exactly this kind of moment. I slid out of bed, feet silent on the carpet, and crept to the bedroom door. I didn't open it. I pressed my ear to it and listened. The building was quiet, but I could hear a faint shift outside, someone repositioning their weight, someone waiting. My throat tightened until swallowing hurt. Then from the other side of the apartment, I heard Brianna's voice, low, sharp, awake. "Who is it?" My stomach dropped. I wanted to whisper, Don't answer." But it was too late. A man's voice came through the door, muffled but clear enough to understand. Calm, almost friendly. "Haley," it said, "I just want to talk." And before Brianna could respond, something else happened, something that didn't belong in normal life. A phone buzzed, not mine, not Brianna's. A soft vibration from the hallway, like a device that had been placed there on purpose. Then another buzz, and another, like someone was pacing the apartment from the outside, triggering whatever they'd planted, letting us know they could reach in. Brianna didn't move. I could hear it in the stillness, her pausing, thinking, choosing. Then, in a voice that turned to ice, she said, "Haley, stay in the room. Call 911. Right now." My hand shook so badly I almost dropped my phone. The screen lit the room in a pale wash as I unlocked it. Before I could dial, a new message appeared on my new number. From an unknown sender. "Only 4 words. Good girl, don't answer." And on the other side of the door, the man tapped again, slow, deliberate, intimate. Tap, tap, tap. Brianna didn't ask me if I was sure. She didn't debate. She moved like a person who'd already accepted that some nights are decided in a single second. I dialed 911 with fingers that felt too big for the screen. My new number, my new life, still reachable. The operator answered calm and rehearsed, and I kept my voice low, like volume could keep the outside from hearing me. "There's someone at the door," Brianna said loudly enough for me to hear from the guest room, like she wanted whoever was out there to know this wasn't going to be handled quietly. "He's asking for my friend. We don't know him. He won't leave." I heard the operator ask for an address. Brianna gave it without hesitation. Then the tapping stopped. Not because the man left, because he chose silence, and silence is its own kind of pressure. The pause felt like a hand hovering inches above a hot stove, waiting, threatening, enjoying the tension of the almost. Brianna didn't open the door. She didn't go near it. She backed into the hallway and clicked on every light, flooding the apartment with brightness, like brightness could become a barrier. I stayed in the guest room doorway, half-hidden phone pressed to my ear, my heart trying to break out of my ribs. The hallway buzzed again, another vibration from a phone that wasn't ours. Brianna's eyes flicked to the source. There on the floor by the coat rack was a small black rectangle, a phone. Not hers, not mine. It hadn't been there earlier. I knew that with a cold certainty because I'd walked past that spot twice before bed and the floor had been empty. Brianna stared at it like it was a snake. "Don't touch it," I whispered. "I'm not," she whispered back, but her voice was tight-clipped, anger showing through the fear. On the other side of the front door, something shifted. A footstep close enough to hear through the wood. Then the man spoke again, still calm. "Haley," he said, like my name tasted good. "Come on, I'm not here to hurt you." Brianna's jaw clenched. She raised her voice without moving closer. "Leave," she said. "Police are coming." A pause. Then a sound that made my stomach crumple, a soft chuckle muffled by the door. "I'll be gone before they get here," he said. And then he did the one thing that made the night feel less like a crime and more like a ritual. 3 taps again, but this time on the frame, not the center of the door. Up high, near where your head would be if you leaned in to listen. Tap, tap, tap. It sounded like a fingerprint being pressed into wood. Then silence. Brianna and I didn't move. Even the air felt like it was holding its breath. The operator was still on the line, asking questions I couldn't answer. Description: height, clothing. Did he have a weapon? Was he alone? I wanted to say yes, yes, yes. And I wanted to say, I don't know, I don't know, I don't know. It all blurred. I never saw his face through the peephole because Brianna didn't go near it. I didn't even think to ask. The peephole suddenly felt like a trap, like a tiny eye you put to the door so the door can look back. When the police arrived, the relief wasn't clean. It didn't wash the fear away. It just gave the fear somewhere to stand. I heard boots on the hallway carpet outside, a firm knock that was nothing like the tapping. "Police," a voice called. Brianna opened the door with the chain still on. One of the officers showed his badge in that practiced way. Brianna unlatched the chain and stepped back. They swept the hallway first, then the stairwell, then the parking lot. Flashlights cut through shadows and found nothing solid to blame. But the phone on Brianna's floor was real. An officer crouched near it and took a photo before touching it with gloved hands. He slid it into an evidence bag as if he'd done this 1,000 times. Maybe he had. "You didn't touch it?" he asked Brianna. "No," she said. "It wasn't here earlier. It buzzed. Then we saw it. The officer asked me to step forward. My legs felt like wood. I did it anyway." "Are you Haley?" he asked. I nodded. "Do you know someone who would do this?" he asked, and his tone was careful, like he didn't want to plant ideas in my head. My mouth opened. Trevor's name sat behind my teeth like a stone. I thought of the flip phone, the messages, the phrase, "Make it real." I thought of the man at the gas station holding my page up like a trophy. I thought of Trevor's satisfied face. I have an ex," I said finally. Brianna shot me a look sharp and steady, the look that said, "Tell the truth, don't protect him." "He staged something," I said, and my voice shook on the word stage because it felt too theatrical for what it really was. "He paid someone to scare me," I found messages. The officer's face didn't change much, but his eyes sharpened. "Do you have those messages?" he asked. "Yes," I said, "photos." He told me not to delete anything, not to block anything else, not to answer unknown numbers. It was all practical advice that sounded reasonable until you remember how it feels to see a stranger's words appear on your screen like they're inside your skin. They took a statement. Brianna hovered close in anchor. When the door finally closed again and the officer's footsteps faded, the apartment didn't feel safe just because the police had been there. If anything, it felt worse because now I knew the fear didn't require me to be alone. Someone could reach for me even through other people. Brianna poured me water and sat across from me at her kitchen table like she was negotiating with the universe. "You're not going back to your place," she said. "I know," I whispered. "We'll get your stuff later," she said, "with someone else there, daytime." I nodded, but my brain was stuck on the tapping, the rhythm, the patience. Brianna noticed my stare, what she asked. "I've heard about this," I said before I could stop myself. "The 3 knocks. My grandma used to say you'll never answer 3 knocks at night." Brianna's eyes narrowed. "Like a superstition, like a warning," I said. "Like if you answer, you invite something in." Brianna didn't laugh. She didn't dismiss it. She just looked at me for a long moment and said something that landed harder than any folklore. "Trevor knows you," she said. "If you told him that story once, one time, he'd use it." The thought chilled me more than the tapping had because it was logical. It was human. It was worse. That morning, once the sun came up and the world pretended it was normal again, Brianna drove me to the police station to add the photos from the flip phone to the report. Sitting under fluorescent lights that didn't flicker, surrounded by posters about safety and pamphlets about restraining orders, I felt like I was watching myself from a distance. Like I was the kind of person who ends up in these rooms. Like I'd crossed into a category of life I used to believe belonged to other women. A detective, tired eyes, coffee breath, looked at the photos and didn't act surprised. "This is coercive control," she said, like she was naming a common weather pattern. "And hiring someone to intimidate you, if we can tie it to him matters, tie it to him." The words made my stomach twist because Trevor was careful. Trevor never put his fingerprints on anything that could convict him. He let other people do the dirty work. He kept his hands clean and his face gentle. The detective asked for Trevor's full name, his date of birth if I knew it, his address, his work, any mutual friends, any previous incidents. I answered what I could, and every answer felt like pulling a thread out of a sweater I'd worn every day, realizing too late how many holes were already there. When we left the station, the daylight felt harsh and unreal, like a filter over the world. Brianna drove us back to her place and made a list, actual pen and paper list, of what I needed for my apartment: ID, passport, bank documents, laptop, clothing, anything sentimental. She organized it with the calm intensity of a person who refuses to be helpless. "You're going to stay offline," she said. "You're going to stop posting your location. You're going to assume he has eyes where you don't." I wanted to argue that Trevor couldn't do that he wasn't some movie villain, but I'd already seen him write a scene and cast me as the victim, so I just nodded. 2 days later, we went back to my apartment in the middle of the afternoon. Brianna brought her brother Marcus, a quiet, broad-shouldered man who didn't ask questions, but looked at me with a kind of respectful anger, like he understood enough. The hallway outside my old door smelled the same laundry detergent and someone's cooking. The normality felt insulting. When I unlocked the door, I half expected the apartment to look different, like it would reflect the truth. It didn't. Everything was exactly where it had been. Couch, coffee table, a throw blanket folded just the way I liked it. It looked like a safe place, but the air felt wrong, stale, like it had been holding a breath. We moved quickly. Bags, open drawers emptied. I avoided looking at the couch where Trevor used to sit when he'd say things like, "I just want you safe." I avoided the mirror in the hallway because I didn't want to see my own face in this place anymore. In the bedroom, I found a small gift box on the bed, a neat square, wrapped, no card. My blood turned to ice. Brianna saw my expression. "Don't touch it," she said immediately, and her voice had that same edge it had the night of the tapping. Marcus stepped forward, careful, and looked around the room like he was measuring distances, exits, angles. "I didn't leave that," I whispered. "Of course you didn't," Brianna said. "Back up." She pulled her phone out, snapped a photo, and then another, like evidence mattered more than emotion now. Marcus didn't touch the box either. He just leaned in close enough to see the tape. The tape had been pressed down in 3 small overlapping strips. 3. My lungs forgot how to work. Brianna noticed too. Her eyes narrowed like she wanted to burn the pattern off the world. "We are leaving," she said. "But I started thinking of the last drawer I hadn't emptied." "You can buy new stuff," Brianna snapped. "You can't buy a new nervous system." We backed out of the apartment. Marcus shut the door without locking it, like the lock no longer mattered. In the stairwell, I realized my hands were shaking so hard my fingers were numb. In the car, Brianna's phone buzzed. She glanced at the screen and went still. Then she turned it toward me. A text from an unknown number. A photo. My old apartment door shot from the hallway as if someone had taken it seconds ago. In the corner of the image, a shadowy reflection in the peephole glass, someone holding a phone. Below the photo, 4 words, "Don't leave gifts unopened." Marcus swore under his breath. Brianna's hands tightened on the steering wheel until her knuckles went pale. My stomach rolled. My mind flashed to that man's voice through Brianna's door. "I'll be gone before they get here." They weren't just following me. They were timing me. And suddenly I understood something that made my skin crawl. The gas station wasn't the first time I'd been watched. It was just the first time they wanted me to notice. Brianna drove without speaking, faster than usual, as if speed could outrun a message already delivered. When we got back to her place, she locked the door, then locked it again like she didn't trust the first lock to mean it. I sat on her couch, staring at my hands. All I could think about was the phrase the man had said at the gas station, the one that had always sounded like obsession. "I knew you'd be prettier in person." Back then, I'd wondered if it was something he thought. Now I wondered if it was something Trevor wrote for him. Because whoever was behind this Trevor the hired man, both of them, it wasn't just about scaring me into deleting an account anymore. It was about making sure I never stopped being scared. And that's when it hit me, sharp and sickening. Trevor didn't just want me to quit. He wanted me to learn a rule. He wanted me to believe that the world outside him was dangerous, so that the only place that felt safe would be back in his arms. That night, I didn't sleep at Brianna's. We drove to a motel across town, paid cash, and parked where we could see the entrance. Marcus stayed in his car outside, insisting he wasn't leaving us alone. In the motel room, the air smelled like bleach and old fabric softener. The curtains were too thin. The bedspread was patterned in a way that made stains hard to spot. I sat on the edge of the bed and tried to breathe. Brianna sat beside me and said quietly, like she was speaking to the part of me that still wanted to make excuses, "This is what predators do," she said. "They don't always hit. Sometimes they just rearrange your world until you think you can't live without them." I nodded, tears burning behind my eyes. My phone buzzed again. I almost didn't look. My body wanted to pretend it wasn't happening, like denial could act as armor, but Brianna's hand covered mine. "Look," she said, "we document, we don't panic." I turned the screen over. Another unknown number, another message. Only one line this time. 3 taps means you're home, and in the silence of the motel room, faint as a thought, I heard it. Not from the door, not from the wall, from the inside of the room itself, like a noise the building had decided to make at the worst possible moment. Tap, tap, tap. The taps weren't loud. They weren't even clearly coming from a single place. That was what made them feel wrong, like the sound was traveling through the bones of the room instead of through air. Brianna froze. Her eyes flicked to the door, then to the window, then down toward the nightstand, where the cheap lamp hummed faintly. Marcus's voice came through the phone speaker from the parking lot outside. "You okay?" he asked. "I saw your light flicker." The motel room did have that kind of light, the kind that buzzes and dims without warning, making everything feel half real. But I didn't want to give the building credit for what my skin already knew. "Marcus," Brianna said, keeping her voice steady, "stay on the line." I could hear him shift in his car. "What's going on?" Brianna didn't answer right away. She stood slowly and walked to the door without taking her eyes off it. Her hand didn't reach for the knob. It hovered close, like she was measuring whether the metal would be cold. The tapping came again. Tap, tap, tap. This time it sounded like it came from the bathroom. I felt my throat close. Brianna turned her head toward the bathroom door, half open, a sliver of darkness inside. In the mirror above the sink, our reflections were warped by the cheap glass. "Bathroom," I whispered. Marcus swore softly on the phone. Brianna grabbed the lamp off the nightstand and held it like a blunt weapon, the cord trailing behind her like a leash. She stepped toward the bathroom, slow and deliberate, as if speed would make her clumsy. The tapping stopped, and in the silence, something else became noticeable, a wet sound like fingers sliding across tile. Brianna flicked the bathroom light on with her elbow. Empty. The tub curtain hung still. The towels looked unused, stiff and folded. The sink was dry. Nothing moved. Then the motel phone mounted on the bedside table rang. It was so sudden I flinched hard enough to hurt my neck. The ring was shrill, old-fashioned, the kind of sound designed to be heard through walls. Brianna stared at it like it was alive. It rang again. Once. Twice. I didn't want her to answer. The superstition slammed through me again. Don't answer. Don't invite. But Brianna's face hardened into that look she gets when she's decided the world doesn't get to bully her for free. She snatched the receiver up. "Yeah," she said flatly. A pause. Her eyes flicked to me. Then slowly her face drained of color. I couldn't hear the other side, but I could hear Brianna's breathing change shorter, tighter. "Say that again," she said. Silence. Then Brianna's jaw clenched. "No," she said, voice low. "You listen to me. You come near her again." She stopped mid-sentence, like she realized threats were oxygen to the kind of person who fed on control. Her eyes met mine. Then she hung up. The line went dead with a soft click that felt too final. What I asked, my voice barely there. Brianna didn't answer immediately. She stared at the receiver like it might ring again. When she finally spoke, her voice sounded different, careful, like she was choosing every word to keep me from shattering. "They said your name," she said. My stomach turned. "Trevor," Brianna swallowed. "They didn't say Trevor." "Then who?" Brianna's mouth tightened. "They said Angel." The same word the man at the gas station had used. The same word from the message, tap, 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 angel. My skin prickled all over like my body wanted to climb out of itself. Marcus's voice cut in on the phone. "Bree, what happened? Do I need to come up there?" Brianna exhaled through her nose, trying to keep control of her hands. "Stay by the car. If anyone walks by our door, I want you to see it." I couldn't sit still. I paced a step, then another, then stopped because movement felt like noise. My phone buzzed again. I almost threw it. I almost didn't look. But fear is a hook and curiosity is its barb. New message, unknown number. See, even strangers call you what he does. My vision blurred. He could only mean one person. Trevor. I felt the room tilt not from supernatural dread, but from something uglier. The realization that the stranger at the gas station wasn't the only actor in this. Trevor was still in the script, still directing from off stage. Brianna grabbed my wrist, gently grounding me. "Okay," she said. "We're done reacting. We're making moves." "Like what?" My voice cracked. "Like a protective order," she said. "Like changing the plan, like getting you somewhere he can't predict." I laughed once, sharp and humorless. "He found my new number in a month." Brianna's eyes narrowed. "He found it because he has a pipeline, people, access, or he's using something you didn't think about." My mind raced. "My email," I whispered. "My accounts could be," Brianna said. "Or it's something simpler." What Brianna's gaze flicked to my phone. "Your old phone is still synced to things. Your apps, your carrier, your contacts, your backups. If he ever had your passwords even once, he can keep reaching." I felt sick. Trevor used to help me with my phone. He'd take it, fix settings, download apps, set up security. He made it sound like love. I pulled my phone open and started checking like a desperate person searching for a ticking bomb. Email logins, device history, password resets. Then I saw it. On my primary email account under devices, there was a login I didn't recognize. A location pinged from a neighborhood I knew. Trevor's neighborhood. My hands went numb. "He's in my email," I whispered. Brianna leaned in, saw it, and her face went razor sharp. "Okay," she said. "That's how. We lock it down right now." We spent the next hour doing digital triage like we were patching a wound. Change passwords, enable two-factor, remove unknown devices, change recovery email, change recovery phone, turn off location services, check app permissions, check for shared calendars, check for hidden forwarding rules. Every time we found something, an old shared album, a forgotten login token, it felt like pulling a small needle out of my skin. Then the motel phone rang again. Brianna didn't answer. She unplugged it from the wall and tossed it on the floor like it was trash. The tapping didn't return that night, but the quiet wasn't comforting. It was strategic, like whoever was outside had decided to let us exhaust ourselves. At sunrise, Marcus came up with coffees and a look on his face like he'd been holding anger in his chest all night. "Someone walked past your door," he said. My stomach clenched. "You saw them." He nodded, hood up, head down, didn't stop, just passed. "Could have been anyone," Brianna said, but her voice lacked conviction. Marcus's jaw tightened. "Maybe." But he looked at my car like he was checking if I was still there. That day we went back to the station. We didn't walk in with a story anymore. We walked in with evidence. The flip phone messages, the motel call log, the unknown numbers, the photo of my apartment door, the login history showing Trevor's area. The detective from before took us into a small room and listened with the kind of stillness that means she's connecting dots faster than you can see. "We can request phone records on those unknown numbers," she said. "We can look at the prepaid phone if you still have it." I told her it was in a towel in my bag like a poisonous relic. She nodded. "Good." Then she asked the question I'd been dreading. "Do you believe Trevor is directly involved in tonight's contact?" I hesitated for a fraction of a second, and in that hesitation I felt the old programming. Don't accuse, don't be dramatic. He loves you, he saved you. Then I remembered the text. Make it real. "Yes," I said. Brianna's hand squeezed my shoulder. The detective wrote something down, then looked up. "We can file for an emergency protective order today," she said. "That will make it a crime if he contacts you or comes near you." And his friend Brianna asked. "The guy he paid." The detective's eyes sharpened. "If we can identify him, yes. Identify him." I realized something then. something that made me feel both nauseous and empowered. The stranger's face at the gas station mud-caked dreadlock beard was the only physical detail I had of the person Trevor hired. If I could find him, the whole structure could collapse. We left the station with paperwork and instructions, and that thin legal language that tries to contain terror inside forms and signatures. Back at Brianna's, we did something that felt surreal. We printed my OnlyFans page screenshots that I'd saved before deleting, and the gas station's location and the time and the date. We made a timeline like a crime show, because that's what this had become a case. That evening, my old neighbor from my apartment complex called Brianna's phone. I didn't recognize the number, but Brianna answered on speaker. "Hey," a woman's voice said. "This is Tasha. I'm sorry to bother you. I found your number on Haley's emergency contact card in the lobby." My stomach clenched. "What's wrong?" I asked, and my voice sounded too loud in my own ears. Tasha hesitated. "There's someone asking around about you." Brianna's face went hard. "Who?" a guy, Tasha said. "He's been waiting by the mailboxes. Told the manager he's your boyfriend. He said your name, and—" She lowered her voice. "He said, 'Tell my angel to come home.'" My lungs stopped. Brianna spoke carefully. "Tasha, is he still there?" "No," Tasha said. "He left 5 minutes ago when I told him the manager was calling the cops. But I wanted you to know." I thanked her with a voice that didn't feel like mine and hung up. The room went quiet. Marcus, sitting at Brianna's kitchen counter, clenched his jaw so hard I saw the muscle twitch. "That's him," he said. "That's your Trevor." Brianna turned to me. "He wants you to know he can appear anywhere," she said. "He wants you to feel like the only way to stop this is to stop running." My hands shook. "What do I do?" Brianna didn't hesitate. "You don't go back," she said. "And you don't go alone. And you don't negotiate." Marcus stood. "We should move her tonight," he said. "Different place." My chest tightened. "He'll find me again." Brianna's eyes narrowed. "Maybe," she said. "But every time he reaches, he leaves a fingerprint. Every time he tries to scare you into obedience, he adds another brick to the case." I wanted to believe that. I wanted to believe law and logic could beat obsession. But the superstition in me, the old folklore voice, whispered that this wasn't just a man anymore. It was a pattern, a ritual. 3 taps, angel, come home. As night fell, Brianna insisted I shower and rest. Like rest was possible. Like sleep was a switch you could flip back on after someone teaches your body that danger can appear at any door. I lay in the guest room again, staring at the ceiling. My phone was face down. I'd turned off notifications. I'd done everything to sever the invisible lines. Still, my mind replayed the tapping. Tap, tap, tap. At 11:11 p.m., Brianna's security camera app sent a silent alert to her tablet. Motion detected. Brianna's breath caught. Marcus leaned over her shoulder. They didn't call my name. They didn't announce it like a horror movie. Brianna just turned the tablet toward me. The camera feed showed her front porch. The light cast a dull cone across the steps, and in that cone stood a figure, hood up, head, bowed hands in pockets. He didn't knock. He lifted his hand slowly and tapped the doorbell camera itself right where the lens was. Tap, tap, tap. Then he looked directly into the camera, and even through grainy night vision I recognized the shape of his smile, not warm, not angry. Satisfied. Brianna didn't scream. She didn't gasp. She just went very still, like her body had decided movement was a luxury it couldn't afford. Marcus reached for his keys on instinct. The kind of instinct that comes from being the person people call when they need a door held closed. His shoulders were already squared, his jaw set. But Brianna snapped her fingers once, sharp, silent, and pointed at the tablet again. "Don't go outside," she said, her voice low and absolute. "That's what he wants." The figure on the porch didn't move. He stood in the porch light like he belonged there, like he'd been invited, like he was a polite visitor waiting his turn. My phone buzzed face down on the bed. Even with notifications off, the vibration felt like it traveled through the mattress and into my spine. Brianna didn't look away from the feed. "Don't," she said, as if she could hear the buzzing before I could. I didn't touch the phone. On the tablet, the figure lifted his hand again, slow and deliberate, and tapped the camera lens. Tap. 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 Then he lowered his hand and almost casually pointed at the front door. Not knocking, not ringing, just pointing like he was directing our eyes to the exact place he wanted our attention. Marcus leaned closer to the screen. "Can you zoom?" he whispered. Brianna pinched the image, magnifying it until the pixels broke apart. The hood shadowed his face, but the smile was there again, that same satisfied curve like he'd already won something we didn't know we'd lost. My throat tightened. "That's not the gas station guy," I said, and the words came out before I could stop them. Brianna's eyes flicked to me without turning her head. "How do you know different build?" I whispered. "Different posture. That guy was jittery, this one is calm." Marcus stared at the feed for another second. "Trevor's calm," he said, and the way he said Trevor's name sounded like he was biting down on it. Brianna didn't argue. She only did what she'd done before, what she kept doing, because it was the one thing that didn't give the situation what it wanted. She picked up her phone and dialed 911. "This is Brianna Walsh," she said when the operator answered, crisp and controlled. "We have a man on our porch. He has been stalking my friend. We have an open report. He's violating," her voice caught for the first time just a hair. The operator asked for the address. Brianna gave it. I watched the tablet as if it were a window into a nightmare we couldn't close. The figure tilted his head slightly as if listening through the door, as if he could hear Brianna's voice. Then he did something that made my stomach drop even harder than the tapping. He stepped sideways out of the porch light and into the darkness beside the front door, where the camera struggled to catch him. It felt strategic, like he wanted us to know he could vanish on command. Marcus shifted tense. "I can see him from the stairwell window," he said, and before Brianna could stop him, he was already moving. Not toward the front door, but toward the narrow hallway that led to the building's interior stairwell. Brianna snapped Marcus. "I'm not going outside," he said, and his voice stayed low. "I'm looking." He moved fast, but careful, like he didn't want his footsteps to become a signal. Brianna kept 911 on speaker eyes on the tablet. I stood frozen in the guest room doorway, my hands empty, my body full of noise. Marcus returned 30 seconds later, his face tighter than before. "He's gone," he said. On the tablet, the porch was empty too. The light cast the same dull cone unchanged, like nothing had ever stood there. Brianna exhaled once slow. "Stay on the line," she told the operator. "He was here. He left, but we have a camera feed." The operator said officers were en route. Silence settled back into the apartment, but it wasn't relief. It was the kind of quiet that follows a threat, heavy, suspicious, waiting for the next move. Then my phone buzzed again. This time it slid slightly on the bedspread as if it wanted to be noticed. Brianna's eyes cut to it. "Read it," she said, "but don't respond." My fingers felt clumsy as I picked up the phone. The screen was bright enough to make my eyes water. "Unknown number. One message. Good. You learned not to open doors. Now learn not to call for help." My stomach lurched. Brianna leaned in, read it, and didn't flinch. But I saw her pupils tighten. Marcus let out a sharp breath through his nose. "He's escalating," he said. Brianna nodded once. "Because it's not working," she said. "He expected you to panic, to break, to run back to him. You're not." I swallowed hard. "I'm still panicking," I said, and my voice cracked because it was true. Brianna's gaze softened for half a second. "Yeah," she said quietly, "but you're panicking in the right direction." The police arrived within minutes. 2 officers, one younger, one older. They asked the same questions I'd heard before. What did he look like? Did we see a weapon? Did he say anything? Did we open the door? Brianna showed them the video clip. The older officer watched it with a kind of professional stillness, then rewound it and watched again, slower. He didn't say much, but his jaw shifted slightly when the figure tapped the camera lens. "Do you have a name?" he asked. Brianna looked at me. My mouth went dry. Saying Trevor out loud felt like conjuring him, like giving him shape. But the detective's earlier words echoed. Every reach leaves a fingerprint. "Trevor Halstead," I said. He's my ex." The younger officer wrote it down. The older officer nodded like he'd already guessed. "You have a protective order filed?" he asked. "Emergency request started," Brianna said. "Detective Alvarez is handling it." The older officer's eyes flicked up at that. "Okay," he said. "We'll add this to the report. Try to keep the footage backed up if he returns call again." After they left, Brianna double-checked every lock and then sat at her kitchen table like she was bracing herself against something invisible. Marcus didn't sit. He paced, controlled like a caged animal trying not to slam into the bars. I stood by the window staring at the parking lot below. Every car looked like it could be his. Every shadow looked like it could hold a person. Brianna's voice cut through my spiraling. "Haley," she said. I turned. She held up the tablet. "Look." The camera feed wasn't on the porch anymore. It was on the hallway camera inside the building, an angle Brianna's landlord had installed near the entrance. Brianna had access because she was on the tenant association email list and knew the login. It was the kind of mundane privilege that suddenly mattered. In the hallway feed, the entrance door was visible. The timestamp matched the moment he'd been on the porch. Brianna rewound. A figure stepped into the hallway hood, up, head down, moving with that same calm. He didn't rush. He walked like he had all night. He stopped directly under the hallway camera and looked up. For one clear second, the camera caught his face. Marcus leaned in. "That's him," he said immediately. My body reacted before my mind did, heat flooding my skin, then cold. The face wasn't the gas station man's. It was Trevor's. Not a look-alike. Not a maybe. Trevor. His eyes lifted to the camera with something that looked like amusement, and then, like he was doing it for an audience, he smiled. He raised his hand and very slowly tapped the wall beneath the camera. Tap, tap, tap. Then he reached into his pocket and placed something on the floor directly below the lens, deliberate like he wanted it recorded. He turned and walked out. Brianna paused the video. The object on the floor was small, dark, rectangular. Marcus's voice went tight. He left something inside the building. Brianna stood so fast, her chair scraped. "No one touches it," she said. "We call the cops back." Marcus nodded, already moving toward the door. Brianna blocked him with her arm. "We don't go out there," she said. "Not us." Marcus stopped, tension vibrating in his shoulders. Brianna called the non-emergency line. She told them there was an object left in the hallway under the security camera by a known stalker. She sent them the clip. It took longer this time, different urgency, different category in their system. While we waited, the apartment felt like it was shrinking. I tried to breathe through my nose. I tried to think like Brianna document don't react. Evidence, not emotion. But my mind kept snagging on the taps. 3 taps at the motel, 3 taps at my apartment, 3 taps at Brianna's camera, 3 taps under the hallway lens. It wasn't random. It was a pattern, a rule being forced onto my life. Brianna caught me staring at nothing and said quieter, "Tell me about the 3 knocks thing." My mouth tasted like metal. "My grandma," I said. She was from Louisiana. She used to say, "If you hear 3 knocks at night and you answer, you're letting something cross a line. It's not always a person. Sometimes it's something wearing a person." Marcus stopped pacing. "You said that to Trevor." I hesitated. The answer came with a flash of memory. A lazy Sunday, Trevor on my couch, me talking about family stories like they were harmless. "Yes," I whispered. Brianna's expression hardened into something like fury, but it stayed controlled. "So he's using it," she said. "He's turning your own folklore into a leash." That was the exact sensation, like a leash being clicked onto a collar I didn't know I was wearing. When officers finally came back, they retrieved the object from the hallway with gloves in a bag. They knocked on Brianna's door afterward, polite and firm, and asked if we could identify it before it went into evidence. The officer held up the sealed bag. Inside was a small black USB drive. No label, no note. Just a single strip of tape around it pressed down in 3 tiny overlapping pieces. 3. I felt my vision tunnel. Brianna's voice stayed calm. "We're not plugging that into anything," she said. The officer nodded. "We won't," he said. We'll send it to digital forensics." After the door closed, Brianna leaned back against it for a second, her eyes shut, as if she were forcing her nervous system to reboot. Marcus was the first to speak. "What's on it?" he asked. Brianna opened her eyes. "It's bait," she said, "or it's leverage." I sank onto the couch, suddenly exhausted in a way that felt older than me. My phone buzzed again. Unknown number. Brianna held out her hand without looking. "Give it to me," she said. I handed it over. She read the message, and for the first time since I'd known her, her face showed something close to fear. "What?" Marcus asked. Brianna turned the screen so we could all see. "One file," the text said. "One truth. Plug it in, Angel." And underneath it, sent from a different unknown number, a second later, was a single sentence that turned my blood to ice. "You can change locks, but you can't change who lets me in." I stared at the words until they blurred. "Who lets him in?" Marcus said, and his voice was sharp now. "How the hell is he?" Brianna's gaze shifted slowly to the hallway leading to the guest room, then to the coat rack near the front door, then down to the floor. A small black rectangle lay near the baseboard, half hidden by Brianna's shoes. A phone. Not mine, not Brianna's, not Marcus's. It hadn't been there 5 minutes ago, and as we stared at it, it vibrated, once soft, insistent, like a heartbeat you can't stop hearing after you've noticed it. Then from somewhere inside the apartment, too close to be outside, too intimate to be the building settling, came the sound we'd been trained to fear. Tap, tap, tap.